Hey everybody, thank you for coming down. I now feel like I'm on a TED Talk wearing this little microphone thing. Hopefully the things that I say to you will be as inspiring as a TED Talk. A little bit about me. I know there's been a bit said there, but yes, I come from Music Ally. I'm actually the SVP of Digital Strategy. It's a made-up title. All of our titles are made up, but it sounds pretty cool to me. I actually spend half my time living in Lillehammer, so that's where I've just come from. I actually teach up there at a music production school called Limpi. So I've just got back. I'm happy to be back in Norway. I've been away for about a month, but now I'm starting my next stretch here. And yeah, I'm going to talk to you guys a bit about... That worked? That wasn't supposed to do that. Hold on. Technical difficulties. I can't see the thingy. Hold on. What have I done? There, hold on. Take that away. And then you do that. And then you do that. Right, so that was to demonstrate that I'm really good with computers. This should be, if this all comes together now. Oh, come on. It should be... Give it a second. Yeah, but, okay. Sorry. I'm not that good at computers. This is not my computer, I'll point that much out. I can't quite get up to the button. I can't see it. Where is it? And you get bonus points. Okay, hold on. We'll get there. Yes, that's it. Click it. All right. Is this going to screw things up? I'm just making sure I don't. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Okay. So, off to a great start. So we're going to talk a bit about marketing arts organizations as a brand. Most of what I do in my background has been working with artists. So I used to work for basically a record label called Cobalt, or AWOL, as is on my hat, forgot about that. And one of the things that we always talk about with big artists, big named artists, is that they're a brand. And any kind of organization can be a brand. We're going to go in and talk a bit about what that is a little bit later. So, about us, Music Ally. We're a periodical, first and foremost. So we do news. We're read by all of the major labels, by Spotify, by Facebook's music team, hundreds of artist managers, artists, independent record labels, publishers. That's kind of our market. We do news sort of every day that comes out in people's inboxes. And then we also have research, so we do deep research on things about consumer behavior, about how people are using technology. Main thing is technology and music. We also do learning and development, which is what this is, where we go out and we'll speak to universities. Again, I work up there at Limpi, the Lillehammer Institute of Music Production and Industry, doing this learning and development part. We train all of the major labels globally, so we're all over the place training Universal, Sony, showing them how to market music better, which is our little tag. We also do marketing. That's my side of things, really. So actually going out working with artists, working with orchestras, working with brands, working with all sorts of different things to help them market better. And then finally, we've got events that we do, which I could tell you about later, but we put some events on in New York, LA, London, and possibly more around the world. Said a few, and just to give me some sort of credibility, those are some of our clients. Some of them you'll have heard of, hopefully, some maybe not. That's a band called The Script. That's a band called Cigarettes After Sex. I just wanted to say that because they've got that name. And other people like that. In Norway, here's some specific clients that we've got. You'll recognize a few of these, I think. So, artist as a brand is where we're going to start. We're going to go into brand recognition, branding online, the strength of a brand group, strategic planning, and then some quick-fire case examples. So, I love starting with the definition. First and foremost, what is a brand? A type of product manufactured by a particular company under a particular name. Fair enough. And this one, an identifying mark burned on livestock. I like to point out that second one because that's where brand comes from. The idea of a brand. You can think of a like cowboy show with the red hot iron that they into the side of a cow. That's a brand. Branded. You get branded by something. So nowadays we think about someone branding themselves, but in reality this term comes from being branded as something. We've sort of taken this and flipped it on its head as a culture and taken branding as a good thing. You brand yourself. Brands are identifiable. They allow people to quickly identify what's going on with something. And it's important because humans, we're lazy and we like to categorize. So as such, having a brand that's strong allows you to quickly be identified by your consumer, by whoever it is that's trying to interact with you. And that's super important. So always just, I like to keep that there. Think about a brand as something that was often applied to you. These days, you take control and you make something out of that. Does anyone know who this is? Anybody? Yeah, well it says that, but yeah? Anybody? Anyway, he's one of my favorite rappers. KRS-One, he has this song called Health, Wealth, and Knowledge of Myself. Those are the three things he says you need to survive. And what he says is, sell your image, never sell a record, image is respected. Records come and go and get collected. Even the records of platinum artists that used to rip shop can be bought for a quarter at the thrift shop. Yeah, so his idea there is, I like to use David Bowie, for instance, as an example. David Bowie had an image that's bigger than any one of his records. And obviously, if you've ever dived into his catalog, some are hit, some are miss. Just gonna, not trying to disrespect, but he's so much bigger. His image, the image goes beyond any recording that he made. And this is specifically talking about, a vinyl recording that you can go and buy at a shop for discount prices after it's been released and it's not brand new. Records come and go, but a brand lasts. A brand is bigger than just the artist, than just the music that's made, than just the performance. So that's something to bear in mind. Something about a brand that could be lasting and overarching and actually become bigger than the music itself, become wider than the music itself, and allow people to connect with something. So, brand recognition. Brand recognition, going back to that idea of a brand, is the ability to quickly look at something and by recognizing it, and I'm going to flash some up here in just a minute, by recognizing it, quickly have an emotive response, a response to it that goes, yeah, I know what that is. It gives me a feeling, an idea, whether it's good or bad, depending on the brand, but that's what brand recognition is. So here's a few. You probably know what all those are. I have to always keep this one because I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, so that's where Coca-Cola's from. If you didn't know, now you do. This one, because I have never seen so many Teslas other than in Norway, which I hear there's the tax benefits, so that's awesome. But you look at that, and I'm sure you get some ideas. You look at that, you probably eat there all the time. But each one of these, just by looking at the logo there, you're going to get an emotive response. There's something to it. These are bigger than just those symbols. I'm pretty sure everyone at some point has probably owned one of these products and has some sort of feeling about them, and if not, maybe you have a different feeling about them. The one down there at the end, love it or hate it, you've probably been in one at some point, maybe regrettably, maybe very happily. But again, there's a whole experience behind that. And again, these two, they've got something, they represent something. So, this also works in music. I've actually asked a bunch of my students at one point who recognized this symbol, and there was nobody that did. I'm hoping here people understand what that symbol is. If not, Prince, or the artist formerly known as. But this is to go to show, and this is probably the best example. I worked with Prince for a while, and he would have this on his microphone stand. That would be the one thing that you saw. The lights would be shining down, smoke would be pouring out, waiting for him to come on stage, and that's it, that iconic image. Everyone knew what that was, every Prince fan anyway, anyone that had that experience. You get the rest of these as well. I have to again put that one in there because I'm from Atlanta, I represent from my own town. We have Coca-Cola and Outkast, that's about it. You get the idea though, again, there's brand recognition here. Some of these may not be as strong to you, these are my personal favorites, but they emote something, they give you an idea. You can look at each one of these and just have a quick little thought process and probably pull something up if they mean something to you. So, what about that? Another brand, again, Red Bull. This one is a really interesting brand to me. Obviously they make that drink, or lots of drinks at this day and age, that help keep you alert, keep you awake, possibly even give you wings. But there's so much more to Red Bull. They do their sort of demolition derby thing, I can't think of what it's called. They sponsor music, they get involved in arts, they do all sorts, and that's to strengthen that brand. So that every time you think of Red Bull, you don't just think of an uber caffeinated soda that has taurine in it, which may or may not be from a bull. You think about something much bigger, and that's what they're trying to communicate. That's something that Coca-Cola also does really well. They spend to make sure that their image is up there with good brand recognition. Again, this is to the big guys, to these products, but bear these things in mind. I mean, Coca-Cola, again, to go back to them, they stay number one because they keep spending. They always spend the most on advertising. That's how they stay number one. They keep that brand recognition up there. Red Bull, theirs is very different, but they spend in areas that make people think, yeah, Red Bull, good experience. They do cool stuff, such as extreme sport, bit of music, jumping from space, if everyone saw that, pushing boundaries. So they've taken what is basically a drink, and it is, have taken it and made it something so much bigger. There's that association, and that's what's important. That's what's important about establishing a brand and then being able to have all of these things that have very little to do with the drink, but at the same time have created a much bigger image. So when someone goes into a shop and is deciding whether to buy Monster Energy or Red Bull, they've got all these thoughts in there as to why that brand fits with them. And that's another thing, affinity. They have affinity to all these things, but at the end of the day, Red Bull is a drink. So, great, bear that in mind. These guys. What do you think of when you see these guys? I don't know if there are any Apple haters. You don't have to say anyone that just sort of really hates them. But if you don't, that often inspires creativity and innovation. And they worked really hard for this, the creativity and innovation. Let's see if it's that. Yeah, got one right there, shining, yeah. I'm presenting to you subtly, I'm showing you that I've got one of these, which isn't even mine. Apple went out, one of my first bosses at one of the first companies that I worked for Apple as well. And he worked with them for years. And what he did when he first started in the 80s, when he would go around to find creators and give them or get them to use Macs. So going out to find artists, to find musicians, to find creative people, filmmakers, and say, hey, you should check out Mac. You should be using a Mac. And they did that very systematically so that Mac became ubiquitous with creativity and innovation. At the end of the day, it's a computer. They make software and hardware. We know that. Different operating system. Personally, I used to use Windows for years. You can do great things on both. But because they've gone and pushed this envelope and had these great, keynote speakers, a bit like this, Apple keynote speakers, doing things like that, they've actually taken their brand beyond just another computer company and tried to make themselves into something that represents creativity and innovation. Strength of that brand. So, where do we see branding? Obviously there's physical, things like a lot of these being actual retailers and quite big, but let's move into talking about the arts and creativity. Online. Online is the place where we spend most of our time, whether that be on your pocket-held device, a tablet, at home. More and more, obviously, people are using the internet. Branding now all over the place on the internet, and it's a different challenge of how do you keep something consistent and cohesive across the web. Here's a very simple example. This is, again, I do put a lot of Atlanta in my presentations, an Atlanta rapper that I work with called K-Camp. Just quickly going through, this is his Twitter profile. That's his latest single, that's reflected right there. Got a picture of him. That is his YouTube. Again, got the same consistent branding. Know that that's K-Camp. Again, Facebook, same consistent branding. Know that that's K-Camp. He's basically taken these different sites and used the space that he's able to use to communicate his brand. That's a very important thing. Websites, that was the beginning of the internet. That's where you went. Obviously websites are still relevant. I think websites are very relevant, and that's where you control the full message. But most people spend their time on these platforms. It's just natural. It's where content is. They've got apps. We've got user accounts. This is where engagement happens. So it's very important to take that place where people are going, and make sure that you capture whatever piece of it. I get it's just a little photo up here, and a little photo there, and there's even more to it of the actual tone of voice of how they're talking. That's what you can do on these sites to differentiate yourself, to identify yourself as that specific brand, and to give people a place to come where they feel like, okay, this is where the rapper K-Camp lives on Facebook. Another place that we look at, especially in music when releasing things, is on, and I'm using the word DSPs, which I got told off for that the other day. That means digital service provider. So that's everything from Apple Music to Spotify to Shazam. The reason we don't say digital store is because Shazam doesn't sell things, but it provides a digital service. I worked for a distribution company for a very long time. Sorry. Long and short of it, this is a Spotify screenshot. This is someone's album. This is a guy called Nudes with a V, if you want to look him up later. He's really good. From down here, if you can or can't see that, we start in 2015. Up there is 2017. That's his first single. Second single. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth. You can get the evolution. As each one of these came along, and now what, the cantaloupe comes out, we've got the melon split, we've got the pieces, it gets a bit psychedelic, it's got some goo on it, goo and it's changed color. More goo, even more goo, now with some logo-y stuff. That's, I think, a cast and plaster, that's artistic. Now it's got feathery things, it's got that, and then it's back to whole again. That's the album that he just released, 2018, that's just come out. Throughout the entire journey of him releasing music, he's created something that's cohesive. And his fans, when they look at him on Spotify, which is where they interact with him, a place that's predominantly green and black, that there's not that much place to put any other kind of information in. It's generally an audio experience. The one place that he controls, he's made sure is consistent and allows people to follow through. So when you see one of these album artwork, or pack shot as I'd call it, as you see one of these album artworks appear in a playlist or what's featured or what to listen to, people instantly have this idea of, oh, that's a Nudes release. And the music throughout, I will say, I stand behind it, is consistent. So they know what they're going to get. Much like if I go to the shop and I buy Coca-Cola, whichever version of the Coca-Cola that I want, I know it's going to be a consistent experience. That's what he's done here. He's taken a visual identity and put it over his musical identity, and the two work together to make something bigger. And that is his brand. So, other places online. Posting on social media. So what kind of posting, how do you talk, how do you communicate, when do you post, what can people expect? The voice, the style, is it conversational, is it question asking, is it funny? All of these are places to showcase that part of a brand. When I see a post from you, from whatever your organization may be, do I know that it's you? Do I have that feeling that there's just this way that it's communicated? It's super important. It shouldn't feel disjointed. For this company, actually, when I was working there, we had to do a very long thing of figuring out what our tone of voice was. So, UK company, started in Sheffield, England, gets headquartered in London, bought by a bigger company. Suddenly we're global, we have offices all over the place, and we have to decide what is our voice and style like, and do we use emoji? How do we communicate? How does AWOL talk? And we defined her. We decided that she was a she. We decided what age she was. We decided how she talked, what her tone of voice was. I will say the Americans were way more into this. The Brits sort of found it slightly cringeworthy. We also made the British people start spelling things a bit more American. I'm not going to say right or wrong. They didn't love that either, but we also decided that she uses emoji. So now the tone of voice for when she said things, there's specific emoji that she would use based on what was going on. She also had a tone of voice, a style. We decided that she was informal, it was conversational, but she knew what she was talking about. We didn't want her to sound stupid. She was intelligent, she knows what she's talking about, and when she talks to her clients or the general public, we can tell that she's very informative, but she's got a good style to her, she's cool, she uses emoji. I know, this is all super, but we spent like days going through briefs on this, debating it, fighting it out, to pick a voice. So when people hear about this, or they hear from her, they would understand what it was. What kind of images? What kind of photos? Do you do certain things to them? Do the images come up in a certain way? Is there a style? Is there a filter? All of those things are things to consider. It may seem like just a little thing, but you have to bear in mind, like I say, it's this brand recognition. And wherever people interact with you, whatever point that is, which may be your website, or it may just be a social media post that someone else has shared on, it should be very quickly, easily identifiable. It's super important. So think about what that is for you, what it is for your organization, what are your values, and how do those come across and when you're talking about these sort of things, when you're posting, when you're communicating. These are the day-to-day activities, but they build into the much bigger whole and make people have an affinity and a feeling and an idea behind this thing, as opposed to it's just some big business broadcasting to me. And that's the difference of social media. It's not mass advertising, it's not a billboard that you can't interact with. It's a profile. You can comment, you can react, you can go back. And if you've really got things, you won't just post, you'll come back and have narrative with them. Talk to these people, communicate to your audience. All of that creates brand affinity, creates a love, creates this idea of loyalty, so that when you are trying to sell something or get them to partake in something or act on something, they're going to be ready to, they're going to be willing to, because they feel like they know you as a brand. So, another thing I want to talk about is the brand strength of a band, or a group, as they would call them back in the 60s. A group, a band. So, the power of this is, if we're talking about a single individual, of course that's them, or as most them that they can be. But if you've got multiple points to be able to interact with an organization or a group, you can have different tones of voice. So we're going to use the gorillas as an example. Hopefully you've heard of the animated supergroup that look like monkeys. They have multiple Instagram accounts and Spotify playlists. Each one, and I'll go into these, has unique voice and branding. And what that also allows us to do is find out that the audience of these individual accounts, these are going to be your super fans. So show you what this means. This is the official Gorillas Instagram. 1.5 million, great. This is Noodle, which is one of the 4 members of Gorillas, the only female member of Gorillas, and she's got 387,000. Those 1.5 million, that's great. We know that they like Gorillas. That could be because they like that one song, Clint Eastwood, or that could be because they are really deep into them. We don't know, but we've got 1.5 million of them. Over here, you've got Noodle. This is a sub part of Gorillas. It's just one band member. One part of this sort of imaginary band. I mean, she's real as a cartoon is, backed by a human. But the people that interact here, you know, it's a much deeper interaction. And like I said, there's 4 of them, so there's 4 of these different accounts. And on each one, they have a different subset of these people that you now know, I like this part the most. I'm most engaged with this. And these people are going to be much more likely to convert. You basically filtered this down from casual listeners to people that heard that one song 4 albums ago, to people that are, you know what, I love Noodle, I love this specific part, I love the story that you're telling me, I don't just like your songs, I like what you've created here, I like the whole theatrical thing that you've done by creating these characters, and I want to interact with them. So something super important. Again, you can see it done here. There's a Noodle post, she's getting pretty good likes, you've got hundreds of thousands here, 40,000 there. Subtext of that. Here it is on Spotify. So on Spotify, we've got 2D, Noodle, Murdoch, and Russell. Those are the Gorillas. As you can see, Noodle's actually got 49,000. She's got the most, which is super cool. And she's got a very strong like female power to her thing, which I think helps her stand out from the rest of the band, which also attracts the female audience of the Gorillas directly to the Noodle profile. With what each one of these, they're able to give out their own style of music. So there's a mix from Russell to a mix from Noodle to a mix from 2D, and you can see what songs they're listening to. So suddenly you've created 4 places to interact. Obviously up here we've got our big ones, you know, more followers on these, that's their albums, yeah, cool. All the Gorillas, cool. You got, that's, you know, a bit more mass. But for these ones, you can go and you can have a specific conversation. In this place, it's a musical conversation based on what you're playlisting. Based on those ones up there, it's going to be bigger, it's going to be more general, and they're great to have those, but these are worth so much. So think about that in your organizations, where you've got lots of people, where you've got more than one facet to work with. Differentiate that, put that out there, make that part of the sub-brand. Another thing that she did, that was, or they did, that was super cool, was these were on Instagram. So the band had been away for a while. They'd been on a hiatus, hadn't made a record in a little while. What happened? Where did they go? Where did these fanciful characters go? Well, on all of their individual Instagrams, they actually created books of what had happened to them. And these books, they're like online comics. You can basically, and if you cared enough about each character, follow through their journey to how they all came back together, culminating in they released a new record. So again, it's storytelling, which is super important these days. Instagram stories are all the rage, Snapchat stories, Facebook's even trying it, we'll see how that goes. They're storytelling. They're giving you the ability to go, and these are based on real people that are fictional characters, if you understand what gorillas are, but they've taken these animated fictional characters and made them points to get deeper into gorillas. And you can read all of these, and they all converge together and take on the central gorilla storyline. You can read one of them, because that's the one that you care most about and follow through. Either way, you're giving fans choice. You're giving them a place to deeper interact, and you're differentiating the brand. Think about it as your different products. It's your Coca-Cola, your Diet Coke, they've got the one with like mango in it now, maybe that's Sprite. You've got these different products, so it's not one size fits all. You've got all of these things that you can deep dive into, but obviously it pulls back into one central brand. So bear that in mind. It's been done in products, but it also works in music and entertainment. I'm going to shift for a minute here, and this is going to get super interesting and exciting. We're going to talk about strategic planning. This is the planning that goes into planning a campaign. This is what we would approach anytime we work on any kind of marketing activity digitally, any kind of campaign that we would run. These are the things to consider. First and foremost, what are your resources? Time, the expertise that you have available to you within your team that you can bring in externally, the tools that you have available, social media, to mailing lists, to if you've got developers that can actually create you something, if you've got assets, do you have videos, what do you have? And of course there's that last one, money, which is always also important. Some combination of these helps you to understand what your resource is. That's where you start. You identify these. So, okay, we've got this much time until the show that we're promoting is happening. We know how to reach people in these certain areas. We've got these great videos that demonstrate this, and here's the amount of money that we've got to do it. Look at all of that from the get-go. Platform. So these are the platforms that we have, the ability to market on. Your owned channels, so that's your website, anything that's completely and wholly yours. Collaborator channels, that's anything from friendly organizations or anyone that sort of gets along that you can cross-pollinate with. Friendly channels, those that like you, those that will work with you. Fan channels, pretty self-explanatory, but the fans, the people that care about this thing, actually reaching out to your audience and having their channels. Pitchable channels, places that you can pitch for placement, that you can ask for. I mean, in the music world, that's often Spotify. Pitchable channels is in what's going to be promoted, what's going to be featured, looking into what opportunities you have to pitch. And then, last but not least, purchasable. Where can you purchase real estate? And whether that be advertising, whether that be getting yourself into a magazine, something along those lines. Looking at all of these and understanding what your strategy is for each and every one of them is super important. But always start and go this way. Don't ever forget about your own channels. You own them. They're yours. Make sure they're the best. They should be the pinnacle. Collaborators. These are the people that are around you. You're working together on this. Again, raise each other up. Friendlies. Those that you have an affinity. Down to the fans. Out to those that you can pitch and ask for help from. And finally, if all else fails, where you can spend money and be. And some mix of these is always going to be important. So who's your audience? This is very important. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute as it relates to some work we've been doing with the Norwegian Chamber Orchestra. But we do this really big in music to make sure we know who our super fans are, down to our engaged fans that maybe are a bit more engaged, they're not super fan, casual, those that might be interested that we want to bring into this, and the unknowns. It's sort of a funnel going from top to bottom to top. Super fans, those are our most valuable. Those are the ones that are interacting with us regularly. They're a super fan. They really care. We'd love it if everyone was a super fan, but they're not. But those that are, let's make sure we serve them correctly. Let's make sure we identify and thank them for their loyalty. These are the people that get the brand. These are the people that identify with the brand. They're a super fan. Engaged fans, those were one step down. They may like the brand. It's not a super fan. They're not going for everything that you do, but they're engaged. They do lean in. They do care. Casual, maybe they lean back a little bit more. They will engage with you, but it's not nearly as much as those top two categories. Those that are interested, you still got to convince. So So that's a messaging that you need to do to make sure they're actually going to take that interest and work their way up. And then your unknowns, that's the rest of the world, the rest of your market that you can go out to. But it's very important to try and make sure you're segmenting these any way possible. Good ways of doing that are looking at who's converting over and over again. If someone keeps buying from you, they're probably a super fan. You should be aware of that and address them as such. And then you can use that to model, to build out, and start to understand how you get these lower categories to work up into higher categories. As I say, they're not all going to become your super fans, and that's okay. We're just happy to have fans, but let's just bear in mind who they are. Another part of your audience, digital platforms versus physical locations. So just thinking about, where is your audience? Is this people that you're trying to reach physically, with outdoor, with actual events, in a certain location? Or is the entire thing digital? Is this a digital audience that you can reach? Are they someone that you can address easily on social media, or you've got a mailing list? Just to consider where they are and plan your activities accordingly. Making sure that you're not leaving out those at physical locations. Is there actual foot traffic to a venue, for instance, that you've got? What do you need to be doing to make sure you're capturing that for the people that will be walking by? On that digital audience, again, it's figuring out who they are, where they are, and talking to them using social media, using email, making sure that you're capturing both sides. So your objectives. Think about this. It's a thing that I constantly say to anyone that works for me in marketing. Is no marketing for the sake of marketing. Because people, I get young junior people coming, let's run some ads. What are we running ads for? We need to understand what we're trying to achieve. Because if we don't understand what we're trying to achieve, it's all for nothing. Do we want to increase revenue? That's fine. If it's that, then let's figure out the strategies that are going to help get us to increase revenue. Are we trying to increase engagement? We're not concerned so much about the actual money value. It's just, look, we need people engaged with this thing so that we can go in and sell something else. Or we need people engaged with this just so that we have this traffic so that it looks good. Or is it actually audience growth? Are we trying to actually grow up an audience that we can then pivot to any one of these other strategies? But make sure you're defining this from the very beginning. Otherwise, you'll find yourself 6 months, 6 weeks, 6 days down a marketing campaign going, is it working? I don't know. What are we trying to achieve? We got a lot of clicks. Oh, did you? Got a lot of, there's impressions. All of these things don't mean anything if they don't filter into what your objective was. And this is a really great one if you're doing marketing for, say, a third party or someone that you have to show some results to. If you can get them to nail this down in the first place and tell you, look, this is what we see as success, and that's every artist I ever work with, sit them down and go, what do you define as success? So when you come back at the end of this, however it goes, I'm trying to make sure that I get them the success they're looking for. Some of them it's going to be money. Okay, that's what we got to focus on. Some of them it's just going to be, I want that bigger audience. Some of them I just want people listening to my music. Whatever that success is, that's totally cool. That's them. They brought you on to market their thing. You do it to bring it to the objective that they want. And then you're a success. Then what you've done is successful. The campaign is successful because everybody knew what they were aiming for. Walter. So, initial optimization. Data capture setup, super important. What that means simply is making sure that you're able to capture people's data, whether that's an email address, a follow, a like, things like remarketing, if people know what that is. So being able to tag people that have gone to your website so you can go back and advertise to them later. Making sure that you've got data capture. Idea being, if you send someone somewhere, I need to, if I go to a site, if you've spent money or you spent time or you spent energy trying to get me to come to your campaign hub, whatever that may be, is there data capture? Is there a quick place for me to go, yeah, like it, yeah, here's my email address. If not, how are you catching these people? Bear that in mind, attention, yeah? When you get that attention from people, you want to make sure that you can quickly capture that so you're able to go back to them when it's timely. Outlining and testing user journeys. This is important. I can't tell you how many times people have launched a campaign and they put the money behind it and it all goes. We actually had this with an artist and we were serving advertising to get people to save something on Spotify, and I went to go test the user journey. It was set up by someone else, that wasn't me, and I loaded it on my phone on 3G, and the background image was like 20 megabytes, if that means anything. And there was like an album artwork that was like 9. I was like, I'm learning, and it took forever. I mean, it was literally doing the and it's like, I would abandon that if I didn't care about this artist. And we're just spending money. So test the user journey. Make sure that where you're sending people works. Make sure that it's logical. It seems like an easy step, but if you've got all of this front-loaded here to do all this activity, and they get to the final hurdle and it doesn't load, or they can't figure out how the site works, or they don't understand what it is you're trying to do because it's not clear, then you've not tested your user journey. And a good way of doing this is get someone that's not too close to your campaign to try and do that. Have some people try and navigate it, different devices to understand. So again, part of that is preparing landing pages and profiles, making sure that wherever they're landing, it's got the right message. You've only got so much that you can communicate, so you want to have a call to action on every place that a user is going to find you and make sure that it's clear. Sometimes we get caught up in trying to communicate too many messages, and that's a danger. You want to make sure that you're having something that's clear, prepared, so that I know what data you want from me, I'm either able to give it, or you can take it by having remarketing. I know exactly what the journey is going to be, and then when I get there, it's clear what's going on. So slightly deeper on that. Things like capturing data. So these are places that we can capture data. Again, remarketing, things like that. Are all the links working? Again, landing pages load. Mobile first, always think about that. We do a lot of our work, and it's sort of this weird age that we live in. We do a lot of our work on these, and we sit here, and you put a campaign together that looks awesome on your laptop, and you actually look at the traffic that's coming through, and everybody's looking at it on this. So making sure that mobile first is super important. Trackability. Are your links trackable? Don't just use straight links. Make sure you've got links that you can tell who's clicking on them, where they're clicking through to, if that's a possibility. Having some kind of tracking in there, as well as we use a company called Linkfire that allows you to actually put these remarketing codes in there. So everyone that clicks on one of our links, we can follow through their entire journey and know where they clicked to, so we can go back to them later and service them an ad or a message based on their past behavior. And finally, advanced calls to action. So having calls to action, where I was talking about everything from the super fan down to identified, make sure you've got a call to action that is targeted to each fan. So whoever it is that you're reaching out to, have something that's appropriate. If it's your super fan, you're probably going to look at selling them a high value item, a subscription, a big package, because they're a super fan, and maybe you give them a discount on that. Maybe you talk to them in a different way that's like, yeah, you're in here. As opposed to if it's somebody who's never heard of you, you start slow and you introduce yourself and you go, hey, we're this, and you give them a nice easy way in, all the way throughout. So, strategic planning, we weigh our resources, platforms, and audience. We prepare to respond to that audience's engagement. We set our objectives to measure their success and manage those expectations, and then we optimize before going live. Rinse and repeat. This is basically all of that coming together. So, unique challenges in organizational marketing. So I talked a lot about brands, products, even artists, musicians. For an organization, there's different challenges. It's not quite the same. These principles still work, but we have to think a little bit more about subscribers versus individual buyers. With a lot of things on and sort of like it's orchestras, you've got a lot of people that subscribe, that will subscribe along. Of course, you'll also have individual buyers that may come in. I've actually got some amazing presenter notes right now that I'm realizing I'm also missing. I'm going to go for it. Sorry, now I got to find that thing again. How do I get the presenter notes? No. Wow. I've done this to myself now. I know how to get back up there. You go away. Well, okay. I don't think I can. You can see my presenter notes.
A little to your left there.
Can I get presenter notes? No. There's a whole lot more in there. It's all right. I'm going to wing it. It's all in there. I wrote it, so I know it. So long and short of it, when you're talking about an organization, so say an orchestra or something along those lines, your subscribers, the people that are actually subscribed to you, those are the people that are going to keep interacting. But again, there's going to be covers, if you will, when an orchestra. So when we work with an orchestra, we have to think about what are the movements that they're doing? Who is it that they're performing? What sort of what are the actual compositions that they will be covering? These are it's very different than sort of an artist. There's also different types of crowds for each music. Not everyone likes the same thing, so you have to think of slightly different ways. You've got this one organization. And think about the gorillas that have one type of music but 4 individuals. We're going much bigger than this. We're pulling back into an entire orchestra, entire organization that has people, everyone from subscribers, as in people that will buy in and have a year-long pass to be able to go to everything, to those that are only interested in certain shows, that maybe they just want to see Beethoven, or they just want to see a specific composer put together, or they've got something that's artistic about it. You've got a segment across all of this. So everything I was talking about, all those other specific pieces, is to basically know who these people are and go into them based on what they might like. It's that segmentation. So one of the unique opportunities is identifying these high value people that aren't subscribers. So once we've got them in, we've got them as super fans, we've got them to that top level, awesome. Then the next level down is to actually take those people one level below and go, hey, how do we get them to become subscribers? And that's finding repeat buyers. We should have this information. Can you identify who your consumers are, who's buying and who's transacting? Has someone bought from you multiple times and you've not talked to them and had a deeper conversation about why they're not going up to become a subscriber? That seems point one. And it's that funnel. It's a nice funnel where you get things through. And at the same time, you go to your subscribers and you make them super happy. You go to those people and you make sure that you're giving them things that allow them to go talk about it. Go, this is great, it's fantastic. I love the fact that I go to the orchestra every week. It's fantastic, I could do all I want. I get VIP seating, or there's the amount of information I get is fantastic. So that helps them convert those other people, and it also helps you have that conversation and give them something to desire. Different digital touch points and opportunities. So what digital allows us to do is segment. So going back to all of those different fan types, how are we segmenting and making sure that the message that we're communicating goes out to each individual, to each different level of consumer, and serves them the right kind of message? We can do that now, but it takes that data capture, it takes understanding our audience, it takes being able to take all of that data, putting that back into something useful, and then segmenting and targeting out your messaging. But you're going to waste far less money by sending a message that actually works, that the end user is likely to want to connect with. That being, hey, did you know about the orchestra? To, hey, did you know about all our events? Based on where they sit on your value chain. And how much are you going to spend on them? Converting that person who buys quite a lot from you, and actually showing them a few more things they're likely to convert, and we could probably get them up there. That's probably worth a bit more than going to that unknown who you don't know whether they're going to come and interact with you. It could be yes, it could be no. You probably don't want to spend as much there. You probably want to keep that one back. And it's adjusting your spends based on your targeting, based on your touch points, and based on your opportunities. So, case studies. We had the opportunity to work with the Norwegian Chamber Orchestra. Went through and did what we call a digital health check, and basically checked through all of the online properties and profiles. We do a lot of these digital health checks. It's our first step as Music Ally to go work with anybody. It basically helps us identify what's what. So we start with the Google search. From a Google search, we go down into all of the social profiles, website, anything that's showing up about properties online, and understand how the consumer is approaching this brand online and how they're interacting and how that interaction is going. So, interesting things we found that were very interesting points here is that they frequently perform with all music memorized. This is super cool. Why is that super cool? Think about if I was talking to you this entire time like this and checking out what I'm saying isn't really quite as good, and I know I don't even have my presenter notes up here, so I can't even cheat on that. It's not nearly as clear because I'm not just talking to you, I'm not going to you. Well, this is awesome that they have their music memorized. We've had ideas of like how cool would it be to have the orchestra burning all their music or throwing it all away, all their sheet music, to show that they've got this, and that the performance is fully connected with the audience, they've got the music memorized. It's something that gives them a bit of uniqueness, a bit of difference to talk about above just that's unique to this orchestra. They've also on the tour. They've done a tour as well, so that's also interesting. The idea, the ability to go and market based on individual locations as beyond just one single physical location. So again, we talked about physical locations, but if you're marketing everything centrally, you can actually go out and talk to people that are based in other locations. And they've even got a dedicated audience in parts of Asia, which is super cool. So how do you segment and make sure that you're talking to those people and playing up all these strengths? Basically, these are strengths. These are differentiating points to talk about. They'll be different for whatever it is that you do, whatever your specific thing that you market or work with is. But these are things to consider. Why are we different? What makes us stand out? We found these things as all great things that basically spur on ideas of how we can have a different conversation. Okay, this hopefully will work. Oh, it's in the presenter notes again. I have a video, but there we go. So, there we go. That would have made the last bit so much easier. Am I connected to the internet? Am I okay to pull up a...
Yeah.
Cool.
Banan! Naturlig energi når du trenger det.
Yeah. Just going to show a minute of this. It's just like looking at the actual orchestra playing to how close and connected the actual audience is. Get the idea. And you can watch that later, we'll come back to it. Oh god, here I go again. Up to the top. Okay, and it's that one?
Yeah.
Getting good at this. Right. So, what's unique? A bit I talked on this, the fact that branding without having the memorized music. So you have different staging, and that's what I was trying to show you there. Is them sort of sat around like that close. There wasn't a bunch of music stands in place. There was literally orchestra talking to audience. They were very close to one another, and there wasn't anything interrupting in between. There was no sheet music. Not them looking down. Not them like looking at a phone to try to look back up to you. So that builds around the idea of nothing between the music and the musicians, which is fantastic. Next example I'm going to use, and this is something that we work with at Music Ally. Has anyone seen Blue Planet? It's a BBC program. It's got oceans in it, and whales, and fish, and dolphins, and turtles with straws in their noses. Super cool program. They're taking this to a live experience. So Blue Planet 2 live. It's one of the largest shows on the BBC, scored by Hans Zimmer. Huge international tour that we're working on right now, where they're, I know they're not touring the whales around, which lots of people have asked. It's basically going to be a cinematic, so in big stadiums, a cinematic show of the Blue Planet series with live orchestra and live narrators. So basically recreating a live of the Blue Planet 2. So taking a television program and turned it into an orchestral traveling event. And it has a strong message around conservation. That's what's also super cool about this. The people that are coming out, and these are the fans that we're trying to target. Again, this is where the segmenting is we're targeting people that like fish and whales and nautical things. We're targeting people that like scores by Hans Zimmer and like orchestral music and like going to see that live. We're also targeting people who like conservation, who care about making a difference to our oceans, who care about cleaning them up. So, because of that position, what do we do to spread our message? Well, we organize beach cleanup events. So I went out and said, okay, and we piggybacked a lot of these, but there's massive beach cleanup events. And we went, you know what? This fits with Blue Planet. I have to say that we had to be very careful because the BBC do not like to be political. So we had to keep it so they were ones that didn't talk too much about things like Greenpeace, but we could talk about cleaning up beaches. Everyone was good with that. And we actually launched a campaign where we would have people go and take pictures of themselves pulling bits of plastic and bits of rubbish out of the oceans and tag Blue Planet 2 for a chance to win tickets as a thank you, because we believe in this. We all want to clean up our oceans, but it starts at home. So showing that started in the real world and then goes into our social media. Those pictures now are great content of people at beautiful beaches on holiday over the summer, pulling out a nasty tin can or a straw or something out of the ocean, and actually putting that identifiable with the Blue Planet brand. Now this wasn't forced, that is part of Blue Planet, that is part of the ethos of the program. We just put that front and center and allow that aspect to lead a conversation that went elsewhere. And then everyone that reposted would be rewarded. There could be rewards off the back of it. So it gives people something to be able to be rewarded for or come farther in with. And that, sorry for the sort of slide notes there, that brings me actually to the end of today's presentation. Thank you all very much. Do you have any questions? No questions? I'm happy to answer them. They could be personal as well. Purple, favorite color? No? Alright. Yes?
Yeah, I missed the point why you were targeting the people
Because it's scored by it's got an orchestra that's actually playing in front of it.
Okay, so
We basically targeted people that like orchestras. We've targeted people that like fish, Blue Planet, like whales, people that environmental conservation, as well as people that like marine biology.
what's the link between the orchestra and
So the live show is what we're working on. It's a lot. Sorry, didn't make that clear. It's a live, full, big screen event of the TV show, but the music is live. So they've actually got an orchestra sat in front of them with a live narrator. That's So they've taken an at-home experience and turned it into a live orchestral event. Anybody else? Yeah.
sounds easy. Well, we target those who like orchestras. How?
Well, so Facebook. And when I say Facebook, I mean Facebook and all of its properties. So that means Instagram, that means Messenger, that means WhatsApp, which I know you all don't use that much here. People on Facebook either put forward what they like, or they interact with things and engage with what they like. So things that we use to target. We went out to people that liked the BBC Earth page, so we could target those individuals. We know that they like that aspect of it. Those people that followed specific symphony orchestras, so the LSO, or the Oslo Philharmonic, or anything along those lines. We targeted those people. So it's basically finding affinity of people online, which is, that's digital advertising, digital targeting. Facebook allows you to build audiences. We went on YouTube and did the same thing. People watching videos of orchestras, watching anything along those lines, trying to basically segment, know who our audience was, and serve the right message to each one using targeting on social media platforms. Did you have a question, sir? Yes?
Yeah, you mentioned that we should make sure that the links were trackable,
Yes.
and you mentioned a tool for that.
Linkfire. That's my favorite one. Yeah, definitely. There's a few different people. It's basically Smart Links is the thing you can look up. There's a company called Smart URL that does it as well. But they basically allow you to create links that, based on where the user is clicking, so location-wise, they could be driven to a different point. So say if I clicked in the UK, I'd get one landing page. If I click from Norway, I get a different one. It's used a lot in music because what it does is you pop one link in, and instead of me just sending you to Spotify, it opens up a page that brings up Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Deezer, regional stores in China like NetEase, things like that. So it basically allows you to have complete control over when someone clicks, where they go, and then you actually follow that journey. So you can know, okay, cool, we've had 300 clicks that came from Portugal that went to this store and they clicked on this, and then you're able to take that segment and go back and remarket to them later. That's the idea behind it. But yeah, Linkfire, they're super cool. Anyone else? Yes.
I assume with, for instance, the gorillas, with all their different instrument accounts, they probably have a person or a team working behind those accounts.
Certainly.
And then I'm just wondering if you are a small band or a small company, how can you compete with the big brands in the same way to be so visible on these huge channels?
The gorillas, they're big because of their music.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
They're also very visible.
Yes, they are very visible. In that sense, it's about quality, and it's about making sure you're having a conversation. So whatever your audience is, making sure that you're using those channels, whatever social media channel it is, and if you're segmenting that messaging because you're able to, fantastic. But again, I talk to, in a band sense or a group sense, if you have multiple people, if there is limited resource, then sure, you can have one message, but it's making sure that whatever that message is a communication that that your fan wants to have, and making sure that it's communication. That's the most important thing. You're not always promoting, you're actually talking to them, you're acknowledging them, which is what drives engagement, which gets the best thing you can do on most social media platforms, the best metric that they like, shares. If someone takes some of your content and shares it, and I've got a whole other talk on that, which is all about Facebook, that triggers in most social media platforms that this is good content. Because I've actually gone, I like what you said enough that I'm going to go put this on my page and put it right there. And the stuff that gets shared most is the stuff that doesn't have links to buy, that doesn't have a whole bunch of messages that are promotional, has a conversation, and it says something that's nice, it says something that's a message, and again, that's that affinity. It's much, much deeper than just trying to sell something. The sale part, we get there at the end, but the conversation is first and foremost, and I think that's probably what to focus on. So yeah, gorillas are massive. It's an example like that, but at the same time, it works for them because of the audience. I think that's what's most important. Anybody else? Yes?
As you said about the gorillas, they take a pause from social media. Do you think that's a good strategy to not keep that conversation going all the time, take some pauses sometimes?
I mean, I'm going to say that theirs was probably specifically down to the fact that they were all doing other things, and that whoever it was at the label or management didn't want to keep paying for that over the entire time. I mean, if you actually don't have any activity, I think it is sometimes a bit cringeworthy to just try and make stuff up all the time for the sake of making something up. It depends. I mean, I guess it depends on what specifically you're talking about. If you've got super fans into whatever it is you're doing, and you can still have a conversation, then I think it's still worth having a conversation. But if you're having to find yourself go to make up something completely because there's nothing to talk about, I think both sides will read that. That's sort of the way I would put that. So for them, for instance, for them to keep up the amount that, because as you say, the gorillas, that took a lot. They made comic books for each one and have taken the whole thing. That all was leading into 2 albums that came out back to back. They did this all to drum up activity, and yet they were away because there wasn't any new music. They weren't touring, there was nothing to talk about. So depending on what your brand is, whereas for the gorillas, it's sort of a super group, and then they all go off and do their own things. But if you're something that stays consistent, but you're in between cycles, but you're going to be back into it and it's your main focus, then I'd say yes, try to keep that conversation up if you can. That makes sense. And we have one more up there, yes?
I'm curious about the work you did with, or musical I did with the Norwegian Chamber Orchestra, and you're trying to find out who their audiences was. Can you please tell me about some of the results in short term?
Yeah, so a lot of what we did is, like I said, we start with a health check. So that goes in and basically analyzes the posting strategy that's currently going on, down to who's actually interacting with it, is there good engagement, is it working? Then what we'll do is go into the back end of Facebook, and again, when I say Facebook, I mean all of its properties, so Instagram being much more used these days, and as well as going into YouTube, going into analytics, mainly on Facebook though, and building audiences out. So we would build out audience that were lookalikes, for instance. Those are super, so lookalike audience goes, here's your audience, based on those people, here are other people that are like that, and then we layer on top of it another interest. And that gives you an idea of who out here looks like your audience and likes this thing, so therefore you could serve them a message that says, hey, check this out, like you might like this, actually doing digital advertising segmented to try and get people to buy specific shows, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
GDPR.
Oh, golly. I'm just going to go now.
Well, I was thinking of retargeting.
Yeah.
GDPR has made it quite fuzzy. Do you have any good tips or strategies?
Google Tag Manager, if you're doing retargeting. Always go with the Tag Manager. Most of your big companies that do retargeting, and if you look at this, these two things are linked. They've switched to, sorry, this is super technical. They've switched to what's called first-party tracking as opposed to third. So generally it was third-party tracking, so you'd have a pixel on a website that came from Facebook, but it was over here on your artist website or your brand website. Now they've gone to first-party tracking, which has been to change and work around all of this. It's a fight. I mean, Facebook's also in a fight with Safari right now, where, I don't know if you've seen this, but if you load a Facebook tracker, Safari's actually blocking them. It's actually Apple versus Facebook. Yeah, these things are getting harder, and you definitely have to work with GDPR because it could burn you. Sort of unlikely, because they have said it's sort of almost impossible to completely track, but the big actual companies that provide the remarketing pixels are gearing up toward this. If you use things like Google Tag Manager, that should take care of those aspects of it. Again, with retargeting stuff, the data sits with someone else, not with you, so it's not being stored on your system. GDPR really affects you if you're storing customer database information, which, if it's third party, you're not, they are, and that's actually on the bigger entity, if that helps. Not about GDPR, I hope, but go on.
It's technical. What's your preferred sales funnel platform manager like? ClickFunnels or MailChimp?
HubSpot.
HubSpot.
Like for like leads and things like that?
Yeah, and like nurture sequences, like something that you can set up so it's automated.
So HubSpot's more for like deal tracking, and I mean HubSpot's got amazing stuff in it where it actually tracks everyone that goes to your website and puts an email address, which is sort of, they work deeply with Google and Gmail. It's apparently all legal. And they have a free version. I definitely recommend checking out HubSpot. It's a bit like Salesforce, if that's sort of what you're talking about. That's actually a client, sort of like CRM, customer relationship management type thing. If you're talking about ad booking, no? Okay.
No, it's just sort of like email sequences and things like
Emails, okay, so like actually like smart email sequencing.
Yeah.
Yes, HubSpot has some super cool things that do that. There's also a company called Hive.co. They do some really interesting email sequencing where, you could tweet me, and I could go and send you an email based on the fact, it pulls your user data together, and if you are a customer, you could do a tweet or like one of my tweets or engage with an Instagram post, and it will trigger an email to you about what that thing was. So yeah, it's super, and actually that's on their website, I believe. Again, I've got another thing all about that, if we had all the time in the world. But yeah, Hive.co, they've got a bunch of examples of it on there, and it's super cool. Like, customer goes, interacts on social media, email triggered, and goes, hey, you like that thing about this thing they're about to sell, did you wanna? So yeah, that's a really good one as well. Anybody else? Great. Thank you all very much.